Welcome to this ninth lesson in our Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council CCAC 1.0 training series. This is CCAC Lesson 1.9 in our series. We want to continue to provide an education in what George Washington called the science of government. This education will result in a proper and needed reorientation of the good people to what is essential to preserve liberty and justice in America. We must be extremely practical in our outcomes. However, we cannot overemphasize the importance of you taking the time to learn with us in this first step of our process. We must ask all of you, our new participants, fellow Americans, to have the humility of heart, the willingness of spirit, the stability of mind, and the determination of character to begin as learners. We believe it will be proven that we are all living under a perpetrated ignorance that has been implemented, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Whether our government, our educational system, our media, our civil and religious organizations, and our professional associations intended to misinform and confuse us to what we need to know does not matter. We are all victims either of self-inflicted or externally caused delusions of non-ignorance. As we said before, the biggest problem in America with respect to ignorance is the things that we think we know that are not true. We must be proactively conscious of this fact. We must be humble enough to realize that this delusion of non-ignorance applies to each of us, no matter how smart we believe we are and how knowledgeable we may be. The smarter that we are, the more we need to be open to question supposed facts we might have been taught. If you do not believe this is so, we ask you to find somewhere else to participate in looking for an answer to our social, political, economic problems. You are of no use to us here. We do not say this to be arrogant, rude, or demeaning. We say it to be honest, truthful, and considerate of the cause for which we are all working. No one has any claim of omniscience here. We all must have an attitude of a learner as a first priority. We will guard ourselves individually and severally to acknowledge our need for learning and openness to information as a top priority. We think that this overall idea of caucus is unique and not duplicated anywhere else to date, at least in modern times. Several of the ideas are historically substantiated, but not recently or contemporarily applied. In order for us to apply what we need to do, we'll have to take time and conscious proactive effort to listen, learn, and think about some things that we haven't been properly taught or read about in our common educational materials. Believe it or not, some of the information may be brand new to all of us. This is not surprising. There is clear evidence of a perpetrated ignorance that has been caused by our government, schools, media, civic and religious institutions, and professional associations over the past century or more, perhaps even intentionally orchestrated to control and direct the minds of our citizens away from the true purpose of us to be in actual practice the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. For example, most people don't know that there were no compulsory education laws in any state of the Union until 1852 with Massachusetts and ended with the state of Mississippi in 1918 and the territory of Alaska in 1949. Putting in place compulsory education was vital for the political class to control the thinking of future generations, to then control the members of society that they need to keep in line. Don't you see that this is exactly where we are being controlled today? As humble, willing learners, we all have a lot to learn. The fact that things are now so disoriented, confused, and wayward in the United States of America is all the evidence needed to convince us that we all need to be willing to sit back and learn before we act. We need to apply some new ideas, but we must first get a clear understanding of this new and innovative information being presented in the CCAC 1.0 training series. And yet, some of this information is actually hidden in plain sight. It's right under our noses to learn and then use to help us all. For example, a simple reading of the U.S. Constitution demonstrates that we as a country do not obey the supreme law of the land today. Although this is not right yet, do you know of one single national organization in this country that is regularly and actively alerting the people of America on a concerted basis that we are lawless with respect to the U.S. Constitution and what we must now do to obey the U.S. Constitution as the supreme law of the land? If you know of one such organization working to organize the people to obey the constitutional laws, tell us now. We would want to align ourselves with this organization. Send us an email to public.comments@ccac-us.com. If you don't know of another group, this points to a blatant example why every person taking this course needs to be willing to be teachable and learn together what we must do to align to our founding documents and then work together in caucus to get every other American to work diligently that they be followed. We also began Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council with a premise. This premise is that we are smart enough, strong enough, and competent enough to govern ourselves. Yet, what is still missing? The missing component is that we need a proper constitutional mechanism for practicing self-government, once again at the local level. Have any such local constitutional mechanisms or forms ever existed? Yes, they have. Do you have any idea what they were? Probably not. Again, this is proven by the fact that no group today is working to put them back. But before we can restore these local mechanisms or forms, we need to start by relearning and reorienting ourselves to some basic fundamental principles by which our liberty can be revitalized. So we are starting with education and reorientation before any other steps of organizational action as learners, students, and scholars of information. And the place we now need to go in our learning is to the Declaration of Independence itself. The Declaration of Independence is a guide to the American people of the principles and forms by which liberty is maintained, or if it has lingered in misrule and malfeasance, to regain that place in society where we once again govern ourselves effectively and freely. We definitely are not the only group that is stating this, but we have a single unique suggestion and plan as to how to implement this idea. We've already started with the CCAC 1.0 lesson series and continue now. Our strength as a nation is still in one people working together in every community under the assumption that we can work in a united spirit together because we are Americans. Our long-time forgotten slogan is E pluribus unum, out of the many, one. Our national song, American the Beautiful, still reminds us that by liberty and law, we have a civilized society. Our national anthem reminds us that we are the land of the free and the home of the brave, not the land of the bound and the home of the scared. In order to achieve our ideals and put them once again into practice, we must first set aside some time to remind ourselves of some forgotten ideas. These are critical ideas that have tremendous consequences. We must be willing to once again learn of the basics of what George Washington called the science of government. We must enter the civics class once again and remind ourselves of first principles of liberty in coming full circle. This completes the 9th lesson entitled CCAC 1.9. Thank you for listening to this 9th segment as part of our CCAC 1.0 series in our national orientation. Please join us for the next session in this series as we continue to unfold the Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council story. This is the extraordinary process in which CCAC will successfully provide continuity of government of, by, and for the people. In our next lesson, CCAC 1.10, we will go on to explain further details of how we implement our Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council. If you realize the necessity of revitalizing constitutional polity at the state and local level, please join this cause by going to www.ccac-us.com and registering on our official website. Take Pre-Quiz 1.0. We then urge you to work through the entire CCAC 1.0 series to understand the continuity of essential information we provide to help us all be on the same page. Then, upon passing the post-quiz with a perfect score, you will be directed on how to take the next step in the process of becoming a member of this vital organization. Please don't shortchange this process. Listen to and study the CCAC 1.0 material carefully. If you have questions or concerns about what you are learning so far or issues affecting your community, please refer to the links connected to this lesson or contact the person who gave you this information. We extend our best wishes from the Citizens Constitutional Advocacy Council.